Welcome to the Business English Podcast. In today's episode, we'll be diving into part 2 of our 3-part series on negotiation. Specifically, we'll be discussing the art of continuing a negotiation successfully in business English. Firstly, we'll be looking at some clarifying phrases that you can use to ensure that you and your negotiating partner are on the same page. These phrases are crucial for avoiding misunderstandings and ensuring that everyone is clear about the terms of the negotiation. Next, we'll be discussing phrases for finding a compromise. When negotiating, it's important to keep an open mind and be willing to compromise. We'll be sharing some key phrases that can help you find a compromise that works for both parties. And finally, we'll be talking about phrases to avoid when trying to keep a negotiation going. There are certain phrases that can undermine your negotiating position and even offend your negotiating partner. We'll be sharing some examples of these statements to help raise your level of awareness towards them so you can avoid them in order to negotiate more effectively. Whether you're negotiating a salary, closing a business deal, or simply discussing terms with a client, the phrases we'll be sharing in this episode will help you navigate the negotiation process with ease. So, whether you're a seasoned negotiator or just starting out, grab a pen and paper and get ready to take some notes. Let's dive into the art of continuing a negotiation successfully. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Business English Podcast, helping professionals communicate more effectively, more confidently, and with impact. With your host, Rob, from Energetic English. Let's get down to business. In this section of the podcast, we'll be exploring phrases for clarifying details during a negotiation. Now, as we mentioned earlier, negotiation is a crucial skill for anyone in the business world, but it can be particularly challenging when you're negotiating in a second language. That's why we're dedicating this episode to specific phrases to keep the negotiation going once it is in motion. The last thing you want to do is derail the entire thing after a great start just because of a few poorly worded phrases or using vocabulary that we really should be avoiding. One of the most important aspects of successful negotiation is ensuring that you and your negotiating partner are on the same page. Misunderstandings can lead to frustration, wasted time, and even lost business opportunities. So in this section, we'll be discussing some key phrases that you can use to clarify your position, seek clarification from your negotiating partner, and make sure that everyone is on the same page. By the end of this section, you'll have a range of useful phrases that you can use to ensure that your negotiation is clear, effective, and of course, successful. So, let's dive in and explore some phrases for clarifying details in a negotiation. Now, as ever, I will be repeating each phrase twice before leaving that magic pause for you to take note, drill, or record the phrases for your own use. To date, we have received some great feedback on this magic pause, as it can be so effective when used properly in line with your own learning style. So why not experiment with different techniques and find which one helps you learn fastest? Okay, let's begin. Here are 10 phrases for clarifying details in a negotiation. Many of them are contextual, so I will use the phrase insert term, where you can fill in your own details as required. Right. 1. Could you please explain what you mean by insert term? Could you please explain what you mean by insert term? 2. I want to make sure I understand the terms of the agreement. Can you clarify insert term? I want to make sure I understand the terms of the agreement. Can you clarify insert term? 3. Can you give me more information about insert term? Can you give me more information about insert term? 4. I'm not sure I understand how insert term works in this context. Could you explain it further? I'm not sure I understand how insert term works in this context. Could you explain it further? 5. Let's clarify the terms of the agreement to avoid any misunderstandings later on. Let's clarify the terms of the agreement to avoid any misunderstandings later on. 6. Just to be clear, insert term means insert definition, correct? Just to be clear, insert term means insert definition, correct? 7. I think we need to clarify some of the terms before we can move forward with the agreement. I think we need to clarify some of the terms before we move forward with the agreement. 8. Can we go over the terms of the agreement again to make sure we're on the same page? Can we go over the terms of the agreement again to make sure that we're on the same page? 9. It's important that we clarify the terms to ensure that both parties are satisfied with this agreement. It's important that we clarify the terms to ensure both parties are satisfied with the agreement. 10. I have a question about insert term. Can you help me understand how it applies to this agreement? I have a question about insert term. Can you help me understand how it applies to this agreement? With these 10 phrases, you can ensure that you and your negotiation partner are more aligned, reducing ambiguity and, in turn, friction to success. Okay, let's move on to the next section on phrases for finding a compromise. Right, let's look at phrases for finding a compromise, which is an essential part when trying to successfully continue a negotiation. As we are all very much aware, negotiation is all about finding a solution that works for both parties, and compromise is often the key to success. However, finding a compromise can be challenging, particularly when under pressure and dealing with multiple priorities. So, in this section, we'll be discussing phrases for identifying common ground, exploring alternatives, and reframing the issue. We'll also look at a couple of phrases that will help you propose a compromise and make a concession. Now, by the end of this section, you'll have a range of practical phrases that you can use to find a compromise in your negotiations. So, let's get started. Here are 10 phrases for finding a compromise. 1. Let's find a middle ground that works for both parties. Let's find a middle ground that works for both parties. 2. We're willing to compromise on insert term if you're willing to compromise on insert term. We're willing to compromise on insert term if you're willing to compromise on insert term. 3. Can we brainstorm a few ideas together and find a compromise that works for both sides? Can we brainstorm some ideas together and find a compromise that works for both sides? 4. It seems like we're at an impasse. Can we work together to find a solution that meets both our needs? It seems like we're at an impasse. Can we work together to find a solution that meets both our needs? Five. We're willing to meet you halfway if it means we can reach a mutually beneficial agreement. We're willing to meet you halfway if it means we can reach a mutually beneficial agreement. 6. How about we agree to insert term in order to move forward with the agreement? How about we agree to insert term in order to move forward with the agreement? 7. I think there's room for us to find a compromise that satisfies both our interests. I think there's room for us to find a compromise that satisfies both our interests. 8. Let's work together to find a creative solution that addresses both of our concerns. Let's work together to find a creative solution that addresses both of our concerns. 9. We understand your position, but we hope to find a compromise that works for both parties. We understand your position, but we hope we can find a compromise that works for both parties. (10) Finding a compromise is important to us. Let's work together to reach an agreement that meets both our needs. Finding a compromise is important to us. Let's work together to reach an agreement that meets both our needs. Phrases such as these can prove invaluable in the heat of the moment, especially when it feels like you may not be able to move forward. Remember at least one of these phrases to deploy when you need it most. In this final section of the podcast, we'll be discussing phrases to avoid when negotiating. While effective communication is crucial for successful negotiation, certain phrases can undermine your position, offend your negotiating partner, or even derail the negotiation altogether. We'll be sharing some examples of phrases that can be perceived as aggressive, dismissive, or confrontational, and offering alternative advice that will help you negotiate more effectively. By the end of this section, you'll have a better understanding of which phrases to avoid when continuing a negotiation in business English. Right, let's get amongst it. Here are 14 phrases to avoid when negotiating in business English. 1. To be honest, or honestly. These phrases can suggest that you are not being honest before and may make the other party feel uneasy about trusting you. 2. That's not possible. This phrase can come across as dismissive and uncooperative. Instead, try to find alternative solutions or compromises through the use of the phrases we rehearsed earlier. 3. I'm sorry, but... This phrase can be seen as an apology, but it can also weaken your position in the negotiation. Instead, try to use more assertive language. 4. I need this deal. This phrase can make you appear desperate and may weaken your bargaining power. Instead, focus on the benefits of the deal for both parties. 5. I can't do that. This phrase can be seen as inflexible and uncooperative. Instead, try to offer alternative solutions and compromises, just as we discussed earlier. 6. This is my final offer. This phrase can make the other party feel like there is no room for negotiation. Instead, try to keep an open mind and explore different options. 7. Let me be clear. This phrase can come across as condescending and may make the other party feel defensive. Instead, try to be concise and specific with your communication. 8. This is how we've always done it. This phrase can make you appear resistant to change and unwilling to consider new ideas. Instead, just as before, try to keep an open mind and be willing to explore those different options. 9. I'm not authorized to make that decision. This phrase can make you appear powerless and may lead the other party to seek out someone else to negotiate with. Instead, try to work with the other party to find a solution that works for both of you. Doing so will position yourself as a problem solver, which should yield a much more positive result. 10. I don't have time for this. This phrase can make you appear dismissive and uninterested in the negotiation. Instead, try to prioritize the negotiation and show that you are making time for it above all else. 11. I don't think you understand. This phrase can come across as condescending and may make the other party feel defensive. Instead, try to clarify your position and ask for their input through the use of the phrases we've discussed on this episode and the one prior. 12. We're not interested. This phrase can end the negotiation abruptly and may miss out on potential opportunities. Instead, try to explain your reasoning and explore alternative options, again through the use of compromise phrases we discussed earlier, as this will show that you're still open for business. 13. That's not my problem. This phrase can make you appear uncooperative and unwilling to take responsibility. Instead, try to work with either party to find a solution that works for both of you. 14. I don't know. This phrase can make you appear unprepared and may weaken your position in the negotiation. Instead, try to do your research and come prepared with the information and solutions that will benefit not just you, but the other party as well. Now, do be sure to take note of these phrases and the advice offered in line with each one, in order to avoid derailing your negotiation and all that great momentum you have built up so far throughout negotiating with your partner. Now, I know that some of these seem fairly obvious and you would never dream of using these expressions in a million years. However, when the pressure is on, sometimes your mouth can run away with you. I'm sure we've all been in that situation where we've said something we didn't quite mean just because we were a little bit anxious during that piece of communication. So be sure to take note and raise your awareness towards them so you can filter them out next time the pressure is on. And that's all for this episode on how to keep a negotiation going successfully. We have covered a range of important topics, including the importance of clarifying your position and seeking clarification from your negotiating partner. Key phrases for clarifying when negotiating, such as asking for clarification, summarizing the key points, and confirming agreement. Strategies for finding a compromise that works for both parties, including identifying common ground, exploring alternatives, and reframing the issue. Phrases for proposing a compromise, making a concession, and negotiating concessions from your negotiating partner. The importance of avoiding phrases that can undermine your position, offend your negotiating partner, or derail the negotiation altogether. And examples of phrases to avoid, and alternative ideas that will help you to negotiate more effectively. In the next episode, we'll be wrapping up our negotiation series by discussing how to end a negotiation professionally. We'll be exploring techniques for closing the deal, finalizing the agreement, and ensuring that both parties are satisfied with the outcome. We'll also be discussing some key phrases and strategies for ending the negotiation on a positive note. So, be sure to tune in for the final episode of the negotiation series, How to End a Negotiation Professionally. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. You have been listening to the Business English Podcast. Remember to subscribe leave a review, and we'll see you next time.